I was tutor there for about 3 years, and then Kate went up north, Kate Hedges, and I was asked to take over the neurology and do the paediatric and yes, all the neurological treatments, and also taught a bit of kinesiology as well. And that's when I went and did the course of both with Kate in Auckland. And in those days, it was very Bobath orientated at Otago. 1978, 79, around about that time. Yes. So when the students went away for their 6 months, they would get quite a bit of PNF from Margaret Draper and people like that. But we were very much Bobath orientated down there at that time. Although I was comfortable with it because that's what I knew, I was very aware that I didn't feel that we were teaching enough PNF techniques and other techniques that were available, and perhaps should have been. But I loved working with neurological cases, and I still do a bit now. So I'm just taking a stroke class with the local stroke club here. But I've always enjoyed working with neurological cases since that time, really. Yeah, I stayed doing all the neurology or the neurological treatments, and then I came up for sabbatical leave. So I really felt that I needed to get outside New Zealand and see and broaden my experiences. And so to do that, 3 months really wasn't long enough. And I went to, I was speaking to the Polytechnic head of department of physiotherapy. Billy referred me to him. And he said, why don't you make out a good case and send it to some of the philanthropic organisations around New Zealand and see if you can get some funding. Then they will regard it as a special case and they'll keep you on pay while you're overseas for all that time. So I had 8 months away in America and Canada, being paid my New Zealand salary during that time. It still cost me quite a bit. The John Mackenzie Education Trust funded me with about, I can't remember, 1,500 or 2,000 or something like that. So to do that, I went firstly to Vancouver General because I knew they had a very big neurosurgical department. And all the neurology for British Columbia is channeled through Vancouver General. And that's what I wanted to see. You know, New Zealand, we're so parochial in every city that we have to have a neurosurgical unit everywhere. And so you never see enough of any one case to form opinions, and so that's what I wanted to do. I actually saw 3 cases of syringomyelia while I was at Vancouver General. I'd never seen one before, and they were doing all sorts of things there. And so I don't know that I learnt anything vastly new, but it just consolidated my knowledge that I was heading down the right track, and also gave me that added experience if I was wanting to lecture in subjects of conditions that I hadn't come across. And that was interesting. I stayed there about 10 weeks, I think, in Vancouver General. Then I went to a paediatric course in El Paso, but I went through the Rockies to Edmonton. I had the most amazing trip there. They told me that they get about 10 days in the year where the bus trip from Banff through to Jasper had the conditions that I witnessed. Clear, absolutely clear, calm days, and the mountains that would just reflect. It was the most amazing experience. But from Edmonton I flew down to El Paso to a pediatric course, and there were people came there from all around the world. But I think it was disappointing from my point of view. They were dealing with vast numbers of children coming in from Mexico and places like that who hadn't been treated, and it were the techniques that they had evolved to coping with these large number, and it wasn't really what I was expecting, but nevertheless interesting. So then I went to Rancho Los Amigos Hospital in Los Angeles, and there I was working in their research lab there. When I wrote to them, I really wanted to work in the hospital, and they said, "Oh, we can't help you with visas." And I wrote back and said, "Well, I don't need a work visa. I'm paid from New Zealand. I'll be working voluntarily," and so forth. Anyway, word came back that I might be better in this other area. So Dr. Jacqueline Perry was in charge. She was the director, and she had done a great deal with gait re-education, and they had invented a machine there for measuring a gait, quite different from what they're using in the physiotherapy department now. But they actually put electrodes, needle electrodes, into the muscles that then transmitted back to a machine that was computerized, and it printed out the patient's walking pattern. But it wasn't very comfortable. And while I was there, they wanted to, you always get a bit of interference and static and so on going on before you get a clear. And they were wanting to find out the minimal muscle movement that they could record. And so they used me as a guinea pig there before I came back to New Zealand. And I found it jolly sore climbing up and over stairs with implanted electrodes and having to use resisted, weights on my foot for quads. Yes. But anyway, this machine worked very well for people who had had knee replacements, hip replacements, measuring their gait and seeing how they gaited. So from a research point of view, it was very, very good. While I was there, they gave me a lot of data and said, have a look at all these figures that have been collected by a master's student and see if you can make a study out of it, which is the wrong way round, of course, but I decided that I'd like to see what happened to the knee flexion and the hyperextension of the knee when the foot is fixed at 90 degrees. And there were sufficient studies there for me to work this out. I think they'd been studying somebody with a caliper. For somebody who had never done stats, it was a very big ask. I had never used a computer at that stage. They were only just introducing them down at the school. This is 1980, yes. And so I had many sleepless nights doing that. But, yes, it made me very aware of gait re-education and, again, what happens when you have restricted movement in one area and so on. It was quite good for me, but very demanding. From there I went over to Atlanta. Well, I went to Atlanta and I wanted to see what Stephen Wolfe was doing as far as gait was concerned. And he was doing a lot with the EMG machines and so forth. And so I stayed there for a couple of 2 or 3 weeks and had a look what they were doing. Also, while I was there, they were doing some interesting work in neonatal clinics, and I spent a few days watching what they were doing there. And then after that I landed up in Toronto. There was a school out at Mississauga in Toronto, and I went there for several weeks, then to Toronto Sick Children's Hospital and the Ontario Crippled Children's Hospital. So I spent several weeks at each place. In some places I had to pass on what I'd learnt from my gait analysis both at Ontario Crippled Children's Centre and out at the Mississauga School. So I suppose it was just a handing on of information that I'd received when I was over there. Then I came back to New Zealand. But one thing that I did bring back to New Zealand was the big exercise balls that weren't in the country at that time. The Swedish exercise balls. They'd been introduced to Canada. They were using them there in the neurological wards. I brought one back to the school and then tried to import more. I wish to goodness I had imported them myself and got a license. I would be a millionaire by now when you look around the gymnasiums. But I'm probably the first person to bring one into New Zealand. So we made a video at the school of exercises on the wall before I left the school, which was Judy Wilson and I were the models for it. It was a bit hilarious. I did take that back and got a lot of the work going on the walls with the students in kinesiology and things. So it's good to see that it's being carried forward in a way that I never dreamed.